This unseen Wuyang Weaver strat shocked everyone when it beat a top team. But how? Weaver has a comical 20% win rate in high level Asia, with Wuyang being the complete opposite in terms of dominance, and I don't mean that kind of dominance. So pairing these two together seems like a big oxymoron, yet somehow they end up winning. So get ready for some clutch grips, what racing lines have to do with Wuyang, and some very serious Overwatch. The game we'll be looking at is between GK Esports and Nightmare. GK have done some Weaver shenanigans in the past, but with Wuyang in the mix, we can officially call this the wet and grippy backline. Now, I know some of you aren't the biggest fans of the pyramid format, but it gives structure, and this time, there's 4 layers instead of 3. Aggression and damage being the most obvious starting points when it comes to explaining this comp. What I mean by aggression is specifically tied to Weaver's grip. Weaver isn't a very aggressive character, but his grip allows his teammates to be ridiculously aggressive. While we don't see much of this in the first fight, which is something I'll save for later, straight after, we see Admiral grip his ball away. If we look at how aggressive the ball was playing, he first takes his sim TP, allowing him to boop the Torb off the map. Looks like that Torb buff ain't saving you now. After that kill though, the ball slams the high ground, getting counter slammed by the opposing ball. Usually in this situation, the ball is cooked. But grip is the only ability in the game that's able to reliably save the ball here. Having Weaver changes what your teammates can get away with, so keep this in mind if you want to play him. But of course, we can't forget about Wuyang. Now, we all know Wuyang does a trillion damage, but Ultraviolet does even more damage than you think.
UV 9k damn, UV has the most damage in the lobby.
What did I tell you guys? This is exactly what I saw.
9.3k.
So the real question is how?
How?
Well, I specifically want to focus on this segment, where he lands a direct onto the Torb before he gets booped off, and then bends a direct water orb onto the Wuyang. In both shots, Ultraviolet was actually aiming out in the open, which is even clearer with the second orb because he wasn't even aiming for the enemy Wuyang. Usually on most splash projectiles, if you want to spam someone out, you aim at the corner, not out in the open. But obviously, Wuyang's bend changes this. Take this example here, with this Ana playing by the corner. If I spam my shots aiming for the corner and trying to bend it, I will miss. The angle is just way too sharp. Conversely, if I aim out in the open and then bend it, I'll probably get some splash damage and even some directs if I'm fairly competent. If you're into any racing, this does have some resemblance to racing lines, or the late apex as shown, and doing this not only allows you to reach deeper into corners, but also gives you flexibility to bend your orbs as you want. This idea only really applies to corners. If someone's playing out in the open, like this Kiri, just aim at them as usual. Haters will say this stuff is obvious, but it's easy to forget. Placing Xenorbs before ulting is obvious, but people forget to do that. And when you see juicy red targets, you will instinctively aim at them instead of maybe aiming a bit wider like Ultraviolets. Of course, from a bigger picture, Wuyang is played like a third DPS, and Weaver enables his Wuyang to play that aggressively because grip is that get out of jail free card. Now, going on to the second layer, mobility and map control. If I show this comp to you, what's one thing all these characters have in common? Well, it's that they all have escapes, or burst mobility. Whether that's Sim TP, Sombra Translocator, Weaver Petal and Dash, Wuyang Dash, or Bull just being Bull. The sheer amount of mobility means that a DPS, in most cases Symmetra, paired with a support, can quickly push an angle. Back to that fight where the Torb gets booped, notice the 2-2-1 split GK have. The Sim Wuyang, Weaver Sombra, and the solo Bull. Wuyang being Wuyang hits a decent splash shot onto the Kiri, which is followed up by the Sim hard pushing with TP. And because of the 2-2-1 split, Wuyang can nicely back this up. From there, it's simple cleanup. The enemy Wuyang does try and clutch with his own Tidal Blast, but Ultraviolet waves to keep the distance, popping his own Wuyang ult to live. Just to hammer in this point, top coaches like Christopher have mentioned how Sim can punish these wide angles.
You start to play Anakiri, you start to play anything that's too wide. The Sim Diva is just going to eat you alive.
And that Kiri playing wide is a textbook example of it. Now next fight, things get a bit messy. Lethal on the Sombra pops EMP early, wanting to kill the Torb Kiri right there, right now.
Kill him today. Right now, today.
They do end up getting what they want, but a clutch bend kill by the enemy Wuyang sadly catches the Weaver. Still, GK are a man up, and Ultraviolet, being the GOAT, hits 2 back-to-back directs onto the enemy Freya, almost catching the kill entirely. And trust me, there's a lot more of this coming later. Eventually, the point gets stalemated, with a symbol coming out to secure the cap. It's actually a Kitsune rush by Lucmino that forces GK to retreat, but they just go back into this enclosed room adjacent to the bots. This is called bunkering, and it's something that we used to see brawl teams do back in the day. Bunkering is simple. Just play in rooms with tons of cover and with few entry points. This makes it way harder for Rhino to dive the backline safely, especially if the bunker is fortified with stuff like sim turrets and hacked health packs. A Weaver tree by Admiral helps his team to push out the bunker, but it's matched by Rocket's Coom, in which case GK can just head back into the bunker. Meanwhile, Ultraviolet hits some good shots into the Torb, forcing his overload and once again doing that wide bend technique mentioned earlier. It's a tidal blast onto the ball that gives GK a trigger to push, but it doesn't find much. In the meantime, Seeker hits a bowler shot onto Ultraviolet that sadly caused GK to lose this fight. However, as Ultraviolet comes back, he's got the triple orb perk, which nicely leads me into the third layer, perks and rotations. Now, in my first Wuyang video, I mentioned how most players were taking the Guardian Wave Major perk while your wave rewinds to its starting location. Nowadays though, thanks to Ultraviolet, most Wuyangs are picking the triple orbs. So, is it actually better?
Yes!
And I'm gonna show you why instead of telling you why. In this fight, Ultraviolet just hits one direct shot onto the Freya, and moments later, she just about goes down. Maybe that extra 20 HP could have been the saving grace. But even if the perk made no difference, the sheer amount of consistent damage you can output is crazy. Forcing out the ball, then hitting a direct onto the Kiriko, then another direct onto the Wuyang. The extra 20 damage per shot really adds up over time, and the wave perk isn't that great in split comps anyways. As for Weaver, everyone just picks the dash as their minor perk. It's free extra healing, and unless you're playing into Ana or Ashe, don't bother picking the Grip Cleanse perk. As for the major perk, Admiral goes with the brand new attack speed on your petal, otherwise known as He Loves Me Not. In case you don't know, you get a 25% attack speed buff if you're using the petal, but this also applies to your healing, which you might not know if you don't play Weaver. All of these perks, while not game changing, buff the consistent value you can get, whereas the other perks are a lot more situational. Now, for this fight, I'm gonna have a special counter in the bottom right for every ultimate that gets 0 value. And don't worry, we do get a good ult eventually. Anyways, we start with Lucmino's questionable Kitsune, which is supposed to force points. But because GK are so far away, and because the bot isn't even close to capping, it's basically useless. Then, Squid has to Wuyang ult his Freya in order to live. I'm counting this as useless or low value because this defensive Wuyang ult was mostly preventable. Ultraviolet just hits a fat Wuyang shot that did most of the damage to force out that tidal blast. Despite this, GK fuck up themselves. Cover's mines on point look reasonable, but everyone is already so far away and he can easily just stall the points. But in the wise words of Jeremy Clarkson,
Still, could be worse.
Lethal decides to solo EMP a Torb who nobody can commit on, and it also misses the virus for the cherry on top. Thankfully, in a future fight, Admiral makes up for it with a decent tree on point to stall the cap. I've already talked before about how good Weaver is at slowing down the pace of the fight, and in this case it's to buy time for his Wuyang to come back. Admiral isn't done there either, he gets a good grip onto his ball to avoid the Wuyang ults. Unfortunately, the grip is blocked by a fucking lamppost.
Are you serious?
And unsurprisingly, Koffer ends up going down. Thankfully, this doesn't end up mattering too much, as Ultraviolet takes a great flank to get first blood onto the enemy Kiriko. But he doesn't stop there. He gets a second kill onto Seeker after the high noon, then a third kill onto the Torb during the EMP, and basically a fourth kill onto the opposing Wuyang. Ultraviolet literally playing like Prime LeBron to single-handedly win a fight. Next fight, that map control idea comes back into play. As soon as the cast takes a decent angle to the coast, the sim is immediately there to mark it, supported by the Sombra. Meanwhile, Ultraviolet fights off a ball, using his wave for his own sustain. Admiral is forced to grip him away eventually, but the damage has already been done. It's one of the nice things about this backline. Each character can peel for each other if either one gets pressured, just like here with the mines. With Lucamino dropping and wasting another Kitsune, GK just cheat 2 ults for free, making the next fight a lot easier. Soon after, Ultraviolet pressures out the Cassidy by hitting back-to-back directs, and while he gets pressured by the ball, he just waves and leaves. He eventually rotates to the left side, hitting another 2 back-to-back directs onto the Torb without even seeing him. Then he deepens his angle with the Sombra, which helps to force out the Wuyang ult. Please, if you're learning Wuyang, watch this over and over again. You need to be able to flank fluidly like this as a fight develops. Now, when Squid pops the ult, he immediately guns for Ultraviolet. But thankfully, Admiral is right there, grippy as ever. However, this soon starts to expose a pretty glaring flaw in the Weaver Wuyang comp, which leads me onto the last layer, downsides and ban reliance. I'll get into this very soon, but first, a quick coaching plug. If you already learned stuff from this video, you'll learn even more with one-on-one coaching with me. Click the link down below. Now, one of the downsides is obviously, without grip, you just can't play as aggressively as you want to. You also lose a ton of space, but again, that's kinda obvious. What's not so obvious is that in this comp, there's thin margins for error. The Cassidy will punish you if you don't get enough value on your dive cycle. In this case, Cuffer slams, but he crucially misses the Cassidy and his Sombra is doing fuck all. With the dive cycle now over, Seeker is free to push forwards, eventually catching the Weaver with his High Noon. But that's not all, he also gets the Tidal Blast, dinking the enemy Wuyang and catching him, then catching the Sombra soon after, and then he catches the sim kill as the cherry on top. If you don't control the cast in this comp, he will just go on a killing spree. Thankfully, GK seemed to be hyper aware of this, so lethal EMPs with the sole intention of punishing the casts. And in the long run, it ends up being worth it as GK take the map. But remember that first fight where both of GK's DPS just get Thanos snapped immediately? Well, that's just down to how important the micro is. Wamone doesn't dodge the Freya shot in time before the TP, and Lethal literally jumps into a Torp shot, dying immediately. This extreme burst damage makes it hard for Admiral to grip anyone because the damage is unpredictable. Thankfully, the 2 major perks for Sim and Sombra, namely the TP shield perk and the new overhealth perk, offset this a decent amount. And lastly, we of course can't forget about the bans. Nightmare opened with a Lucio ban, which makes sense as GK were dominating on Lucio Wuyang the entire series. But Lucio would be very useful here. You can actually speed past certain angles, defensively support your hit scan, and you've got a better ultimate. When I've made past videos on other off-meta strats, the bans play an integral part to them working, and having the enemy team shoot themselves in the foot with their own ban is huge. GK meanwhile banned Tracer. This is likely targeted specifically for Rocket, who, no dick riding, is probably the best Western Tracer.
Oh my god, bro, is dick riding all you do?
Tracer would put a lot more pressure on the splits that GK do, and it gives Rhino a bit more help if he gets shot down by the Sombra. Anyways, that's it for the video. Click the video on screen if you enjoyed, and subscribe because I want to hit 50k before 2026. Until next time.